Good morning, everybody. My name is Paul Lachance. I'm with Dude Solutions. Today's conversation is about maintenance excellence in the fourth industrial revolution. Just a slide or two on Dude Solutions. It's a new name here at IMTS, although I've been coming to IMTS for almost 2 decades, off and on. Dude Solutions makes work orders management CMMS software for a variety of verticals, including manufacturing. I've personally been working with CMMS since about 1994. CMMS being computerized maintenance management system, work orders management software. You can read more about us on our website. I want to focus more on how maintenance is changing with this fourth industrial revolution, Industry 4.0. We do have a full-fledged solution, including things like inventory, purchasing, work orders management, asset management, preventive, predictive maintenance solutions. It is an enterprise system that can work in a single facility or facilities all around the world. Mobility, integration, and so forth. And we actually have a booth, and I have a booth slide at the end here if you want to come see more about our product later. This is a much more high-level, generic conversation about how Industry 4.0 is going to affect maintenance. So I want to preface this a little bit that this conversation today is much more about the future than it is the immediate. But the future is a lot closer than we think, and you have to be thinking about these things today. So I've got an interesting slide here. There's this artist slash futurist by the name of Zenka, Z-E-N-K-A. It's a woman, she's amazing. And if you ever have a chance to follow her, she does some amazing stuff. And I love the way she describes this. The picture on the left there, every one of those circles represents dinosaurs on this planet. Dinosaurs have been on this planet way longer than humans, 700 million years ago. And they dominated this planet for a long time. And then all of a sudden you see they disappear. They disappeared for a long time. The far bottom right there, you see those little humanoid-like creatures. Humans have only been on this planet for a short period of time, relatively speaking. And in fact, Homo sapiens, us, have only been around for a couple 100,000 years. This picture right here shows, well, for the first 200,000 years, humans were on this planet. We were a Stone Age. You know, we figured out how to bang rocks. We figured out the wheel. We figured out how to make fire. We made some nice cave paintings. It wasn't until about 10,000 years ago that we hit an agricultural society. Things really started to change. It wasn't until about 200 years ago did we get into the first industrial age. Now think about the compression of time that is occurring here right now. It wasn't until about the little red square right there in that corner, it's hard to see, it's only been about 60 years we've been in the full-on technology area. And what's next? That little teeny black square is the fourth industrial revolution, or what is next. And it's amazing how the compression of time, you could be thinking about how your crops are going to be improving for about 10,000 years. You no longer have that amount of time to be paying attention to what's happening in the future. So we are in the fourth industrial revolution. Anybody who's been to any of these kind of sessions today has probably seen some version of this slide. The first industrial revolution was all about using steam, power, water, you know, to mechanize. We no longer had to use muscles to do work. Then we came into the second one, and that's all about mass production. Everybody thinks of Henry Ford. It started earlier than that, but mass production was the second. The third gave us robots. Well, you can't turn your head without seeing robots, but they weren't very intelligent, they weren't very connected. The fourth industrial revolution has taken all of that combined, putting it in a digital environment, and it's amazing the changes that are going to come with this fourth industrial revolution. A big example of that is the whole IIoT, and we're going to talk about IoT just a little bit in this presentation, but you can go to a lot of booths and learn about IoT. The ability for our assets to deliver us information about mainly when they're in distress and need to be maintained. There are a lot of other technologies that are coming in this revolution we're in right now. And I've been reading a lot about this, and there's a phrase that I've really picked up on, which we'll touch on more, is that they're often called the exponential technologies, because the change is coming exponentially. You hear about things like blockchain and cybersecurity, advanced energy storage. The Internet of Things is one of these, 3D printing. These are all going to impact manufacturing in general. But many of them are going to directly impact how we do maintenance as a result of these technology changes that we see here today. And we're going to talk about some of these changes and how they impact how we go about doing our maintenance in our facilities and with our assets. Some of these technologies are going to have a higher, sooner impact on maintenance than other technologies. And I put the higher sooner, and again, this is the future, so things are going to change, but the way I see it in my role right now, the industrial Internet of Things is, there's absolutely no doubt. It's actually been going on for a while now. SCADA systems have been delivering data, PLCs and so forth, for many, many years. However, it's becoming less expensive. It's becoming easier to deploy. That's a really good, simple example. But there are others of these exponential technologies that are going to impact us. Artificial intelligence, and probably more specifically machine learning, is a buzzword you're hearing more and more around here. And we'll talk about how that happens, how that impacts our maintenance. Advanced analytics. Another IoT, the interface of things. And we're probably going to have to come up with a new acronym for this to differentiate what the interface of things are, but virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, gesture recognition, voice recognition, things like that. Later on, other aspects that may have a more immediate impact on manufacturing in general, but will have a later impact on how we do maintenance, are things like additive manufacturing, 3D printing. And we'll talk about these, blockchain, cybersecurity. So what I want to do is I want to spend a little bit of time going through some of these examples and how they're going to impact us. So we'll first look at it from sort of a day-to-day standpoint. Picture yourself a little bit in the future. Maybe some of you are doing some of this stuff today, which is awesome, and if you are, I want to talk to you after. But some of these things we'll start to see more of in our day-to-day life and how we run our maintenance operations in our plants and facilities. So let's do IoT first. It's an easy one. Most people understand this. But IoT, from a maintenance perspective, comes back to our assets can tell us when they're in distress or when they need preventive maintenance. We no longer have to schedule things on a calendar. It all comes back to the assets that we have in our, and this is a screen from our CMMS system, which you can see a full demo in our booth if you want. But all of the assets in the system have the ability to have set up all kinds of preventive and predictive maintenance rules. That upper left-hand corner is an example. When I hit a cycle count of X, or my assets run for Y number of hours, or I produce Z number of widgets, or maybe it's more of a threshold-based situation. Anything above or below 40 to 60 PSI on this compressor will, I need to get a work order created. So you have the ability to set all these rules. That's actually been a part of CMMS for a long time. But now we can get that data electronically, digitally from our assets. It's no longer incredibly expensive to get this information and to drive the creation of a work order. And when your work order gets created, you've got all your instructions. It knows who to send that work order to. It can send email notifications. It sends an alert to your mobile device. So that whole interconnected world. The wonder of this, though, with IoT is you're no longer having to see an alarm on a control panel in your control room and have to jam it in as a work order in your system. Have that happen automatically and not have it be cost prohibitive anymore to make those things come true. So this is an Industry 4.0 technology that is really starting to gain momentum. And if you're not thinking about that, you really need to think about that on the sooner side. Track all the information, the trends of that data that are coming in, and ultimately at the end of the day, it all comes down to getting a work order in the system and making sure that your maintenance operations folks have a clearly defined, properly prioritized series of work orders that are coming almost unattended in many cases, so you can optimize those those work order operations. So this is a very simple and straightforward example of how Industry 4.0 is going to impact us. But there are other, I've got an excellent ROI slide that illustrates most people do their preventive maintenance on a calendar basis. Once a month, we're going to change something. We're going to change filters or whatnot. If you're doing a monthly PM, let's just say a simple example, on a production asset every month approximately every 4.5 weeks. You got hours of downtime. You got to take that asset down. In most organizations, if you're taking an asset down, you have a calculated cost because you're no longer able to produce the products. So you've got lost production, you've got labor, you've got parts. So there's an annual cost to doing that preventive maintenance. I'm doing it on a calendar basis like clockwork every month, hopefully. Fast forward to an IIoT-enabled maintenance environment where if your assets are telling you based on their usage when they need to be maintained, well, maybe we only have to maintain this asset every 6 to 7 weeks. And you still have to take the asset down. You still have the lost production. You still have the labor and the parts, but instead of 12 times per year, I'm only doing it 8.6 times per year. I'm saving $10,000 annually by just improving how I do my preventive maintenance. And I'm not sacrificing the quality of the maintenance that's being performed. The asset is telling me when I need to maintain it. So you can over PM an asset. I'd rather people over PM than under PM. However, if you're going to get smart about this and take advantage of this Industry 4.0 IoT technology, you get real ROI right away on this type of stuff. There are other forms of Industry 4.0 exponential technologies that are going to impact how we do maintenance day to day. A simple one is natural language processing, which is just a fancy way of saying speech recognition. I'm amazed with my iPhone how I can be driving down the road, I don't take my hands off the wheel to text my wife I'm coming home a little late. I can talk to my phone. It's not going to be very long before products like ours, you can say, hey Asset Essentials, I need you to make me a work order, start a timer, and I just used a few of these parts. And have that all happen hands-free. So it's just a more intelligent way of using the mobile devices we already have. But natural language processing, speech recognition, it's already getting amazing traction in the retail consumer world with Alexa and Siri. It's another day-to-day Industry 4.0 technology that we will start to see. A little further down the road, what I think is going to be one of the next big changes we're going to see around how we do our maintenance operations is around the interface of things. The interface of things, it covers a variety of technologies. From my point of view, I see this concept of virtual reality, augmented reality, and assisted reality being a game changer in how we do maintenance. The bottom middle one there is an assisted reality headset. You think of, sometimes you hear the heads-up display, HUDs, and they have cameras on them and they have speech recognition as well. That's me walking up to do a PM, and I don't no longer have to look at my piece of paper or my mobile device to see the actual instructions. They're in my eye. I can see schematics in my eye. And I can then, or I can have my boss, my supervisor, who's back in an office, who is guiding me, because he can see or she can see what I'm doing when I'm standing there in front of that asset. You talk about the aging workforce and how to make the aging workforce knowledge get transferred. Tools like this are wonderful. And it's a nice replacement to the paper and the mobile devices. We're going to talk, virtual reality is further off. Virtual reality is complete immersion. I can't see anything but what's in here. Great for training opportunities, especially in dangerous or complicated environments when you're training people where they can do it safely. I think this augmented reality is the most exciting of them all, and that's actually coming probably soon. That's first, that's second, that's probably third. Augmented reality. The picture on the left. I'm a technician doing a PM or a corrective maintenance repair. That word, please go on the first screw, that's not physically printed on that table. That's in my augmented reality. When I look at that asset, that green highlight on the left there, it's not really green. It's the color of everything else. But I, as a technician, know exactly where I'm going to put that torque wrench. If I put the torque wrench in the wrong place, fewer mistakes. Now, the industry's not quite here yet. Again, we're talking about the future. I want you to think back to those earlier slides, though. If you're not thinking about these changes, then they're coming faster. But it's really wonderful how, even if I grab the wrong parts, correct part, wrong part, it'll warn you. Augmented reality is going to make it easier for our technicians to perform their tasks, safer for them to perform their tasks. And these exciting changes are going to be here before we know it. Let's talk a little bit about the week-to-week impact that this Industry 4.0 technology will be giving us over time. So advanced analytics and AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, what I will use the phrase true, oh, by the way, there's an excellent booth if you want to check out some of that stuff, the virtual and augmented reality called UbiMax. It's the only booth I could find around here. They're over in the East building, and they're showing some stuff that will be coming more mainstream in the future. AI, advanced analytics, true predictive maintenance. True predictive maintenance has been around for a while. The concept that you can take a lot of data and accurately predict when a failure is going to come. I use that example of 40 to 60 psi as our acceptable tolerances. Well, is it really 40 to 60 psi? Does that change with seasonal volume of production or even atmospheric conditions that might affect your plan over time? But to take all of that big data that you have flying around your plants now, I heard a stat that 90% of the data that is created in the last 2 years, and 90% of the data on this planet is created in the last 2 years. There's a tremendous quantity of data flying off all these assets. Modern Industry 4.0 CMMS systems will make better use of that data to accurately set reorder points for part usage, when you need to order your parts, to know precisely what you need to order, not some sort of a guess how many you need to order. Calculate those upper and lower boundaries for thresholds, when you need to predict when your asset is going to have issues. Project dynamically the next date of a PM with excellent accuracy. All of these things will allow your uptime to creep up and up and up, which will directly improve profitability. So AI, machine learning is advanced stuff. Industry 4.0 is going to make it more commonplace. You're going to see this technology and the ability to get to that data within your CMMS systems easier. Advanced analytics, taking your KPIs to the next level, your dashboards to the next level from all this data as well. But it's an exciting development that vendors like us, CMMS vendors like us, are working more and more with that data. Another week-to-week change is what 3D printing, additive manufacturing is doing. 2 years ago at IMTS, there was a whole bunch of 3D printers around here. Now there's a whole floor area dedicated to it. It's amazing in what 2 years' time is changing. I want to keep thinking back to that original slide I showed you of that compression of time. Now, we don't believe at Dude Solutions that 3D manufacturing is going to have a direct impact specifically on CMMS as it is to general manufacturing. However, to have a digital inventory, and we already actually do this in our product. Any part you have in our product, you have schematics on the part, you have vendor information on that part, pictures and so forth. Your CAD CAM files to print up that part, click, and that part is waiting for you when you need it. So to tie in CMMS with your 3D manufacturing, your 3D printing, additive manufacturing initiatives, there is an absolute connection that we have there. Another example about year-to-year impact, and again, I think now we're getting even further in the horizon, but at further in the horizon is not as far as you think anymore, remember that, is digital design and simulation. So in the old days, when you designed a building, they did it on a desk with paper and rulers and so forth, and then they went to CAD CAM, two-dimensional. You've probably heard of BIM, Building Information Modeling, where you can model a whole factory now, but that's a lot of times dedicated to the physical structures, the life safety systems, HVAC-related systems. Digital design and simulation now, you're designing the ability to design your whole operations as well in there, your engineering plans, the way all your production processes are going to go. We also see that's going to be designing your maintenance operations as well. Before you nail a single nail or dig a single shovelful of dirt, you're going to find out where your maintenance operation bottlenecks are, so that when you design your plants, they're not only designed for manufacturability, but they're also designed for serviceability. So from a CMMS Industry 4.0, part of the exponential technologies of digital design and simulation is an amazing evolution where our plants, our factories are going to be not only smart from a production standpoint, but we really believe from a CMMS maintenance standpoint as well. So the few remaining slides I have are, how do you plan for maintenance excellence in this Industry 4.0 world? How do you start to think about these things? I'm lucky because I spend my day traveling and thinking and seeing these things, but you got to start somewhere. So I want you to think back to that little picture right there, that little black square. Those of you who came a little bit late, this is a compression of time. We no longer have a decade to think about our IIoT strategy. We don't have those times. Perception is linear. That left-hand graph there, perception is linear. Most people think these changes are slowly but steadily coming. It's not happening that way anymore. That compression of time. The reality is it's exponential. That's why we call it the exponential technologies. And that gap there is where disruption, but also opportunity comes into play. You used to look at these future things for competitive advantage. If you're too far behind, you're going to get left behind because you didn't do it. The technology changes always go ahead of the business productivity, and this is a pretty self-explanatory. We all know when you read like Wired magazine or you see those tech journals, technology is always talking about the crazy future. Individuals like our iPhones and our devices are next, business and then public policy. But the change and the speed in those changes is what you really have to think about. Most organizations focus on their core continuous improvement initiatives. Operational effectiveness, productivity, that's what we spend most of our day focusing on. Forward-thinking people will also think about their adjacent technologies, improving supply chain operations, things like that. How can we do a better job outside of our core technology? This is where you can set yourself apart, is to start thinking about the transformational changes that come. And every time you come to IMTS, you're like, oh my gosh, it's amazing how fast these things are changing. You have to start to have an eye on transformational changes within your organization. And how can you do that? Well, why are people not thinking about those things? There's a lot of interesting articles, and there's some great studies on this, that why are manufacturers slow to adopt these exponential changes, these fourth industrial revolution changes? Some of it comes down to regulatory burdens is a good example. You may not be able to make changes because you may not be in compliance. So you have some things that are out of your control, but there are things that are in your control. Structural and cultural challenges, you have to break those norms. Most organizations have possibly had decades of success doing things the way they've been doing them for a long time. Kind of like how Blockbuster and BlackBerry had a couple decades of success, right? Leadership can be stuck in the old ways. So you got to start, because of the compression of time, you have to try to break those patterns. It comes down to talent in many ways. Forward-thinking organizations need to have a person that's what they're doing. Maybe it's part of your responsibility, or maybe it's your dedicated responsibility to be looking at these changes. But talent and understanding these exponential technologies and changes so that you can start to make inroads in these cultural challenges that you find are important. In my concluding slide here, people will say, give me advice to foster change? How can I help my management see some changes around this? Starts by seeing differently. I really like to have an outside-in approach. You might have like a ninja squad of a couple of people. That's what they're doing. They spend a chunk of their month, and it doesn't have to be a ton of time at first, looking at these changes from the outside in. Don't try to fit it into your current process today. Remember, these are exponential changes that are coming. An outside-in perspective to see those changes. Identify the opportunities. IoT is an easy one to identify the opportunities and see where those changes can come from. You got to have some vision of innovation. And I really think that a team with an outside-in perspective, especially if you think your organization is not seeing the future as quickly as they probably need to. You need to think differently. You and your organization need to think differently. Change is good. Embrace the change. You have to not just think, well, we've been doing it for decades like this. Blockbuster did it for a few decades like that. Where are they now? And finally, you have to do differently. I'm a big believer in think big, act small, quick wins. Pick your most expensive assets that can deliver IoT type data and have that data be feeding into your CMMS system like Asset Essentials like ours. Quick wins will foster change. Quick wins will show that these advanced technologies are not just an expense that we have to do, but can deliver the ROI. And when you start to get that, then the cultural changes will hopefully get better around all that, and you can start to make real improvements. Because remember, think back to those earlier slides. We don't have as much time as we thought we did. And you don't want to be a Kodak or a Blockbuster or one of those organizations, because your upstart competitors are focusing on these changes. So we have, I want to say thank you, and we have a booth. It's down in the East Tower. We can do a demo on the product. You can also visit our website. I believe I've got a little bit more time that I can answer a couple of questions if anybody has any, or I can hang it up here if anybody has any questions.
If anybody has any questions, I've got a microphone. I can walk it around. Any questions? All right, here we go.
You talked a little bit at the end about some of the barriers for...
I don't think that's working.
Hello?
Oh, there you go. Thank you.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
All right. You talked a little bit at the end about some of the barriers to adoption. You didn't mention cost. Is that, would you say that's a...
I never like to use the word cost. I like to use the word ROI, because it's expensive. Some of it's not. I mean, think about your IoT initiatives. You used to be very expensive, proprietary networks that had to be established in your facilities. Nowadays, you can, these assets that you're putting in your production lines or in your HVAC or any of these systems often can deliver this data already. Now, there is going to be costs. There's no doubt you're going to have costs to make these changes. However, there is an ROI to these. I don't like to invest any money in anything like this if the ROI is not there. So part of your research, last thing you want to do is drop on your desk a proposal for your boss that just shows, oh my gosh, we don't have that in the budget. You need to drop on your desk a plan of how that's going to improve your operations and where it's going to save you money or make you money or help kick your competitors' butt, and then show them the cost. So, I mean, that's true of any, even with your CMMS, even with the software, people always look at the proposal and they just go right to the last page and find the cost. Like, we don't have that in the budget. Well, do you have it in the budget for the downtime of those assets that really screwed up your production runs last month? Probably not. So I like to think of it ROI instead.
Any other questions?
Hi, thank you for the talk. It's very good. Would you recommend these softwares to also include some production data, as like OEE or stuff like that?
There's definitely crossover. CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, the production data can have an impact on it. CMMS systems typically will get the data from the assets themselves to tell you when they're in distress, they're down, or they're about to be down. That's the more natural shop floor, plant floor data that's feeding in. Production-oriented data will play a part in that for, say, overlaying your preventive maintenance schedules with your production schedules and things of that nature. Those are typically more advanced capabilities of more advanced and expensive CMS systems, but that definitely happens. From our perspective, it's much more about the assets on the shop floor telling you when they need to be maintained and generate that work order and have it do all the notification. But yeah, there's definitely crossover in there. And the other thing I could probably add to that is your CMS system will interact with your production people as well. Your production supervisor needs to know an asset's down, we didn't expect it, send out alerts to appropriate production people. So there's always a relationship. Engineering, safety, production, accounting, they're all touching to CMMS to various points. And that's probably a better conversation in a demo on the solution. We can go into more detail. Yeah.
All right, do we have any other questions?
Thanks everybody for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for your time.